Thanksgiving Day, 1957. After a winning season, Texas A&M has just lost their second game in a row. Post-game, the Aggie locker room is filled with reporters. None of them want to talk about the loss. They've got something bigger on their minds. Rumors have it that Aggie head coach Paul Bear Bryant will return to his alma mater to coach the University of Alabama football team. Many Aggie fans refuse to believe that Bryant would leave a winning Texas A&M team to take on a struggling Crimson Tide, now in their fourth consecutive losing season. Bryant tries to avoid the reporters' questions, but when pressed about the rumors, he finally says, "When you're out playing as a kid, say you heard your mama call out. If you thought she just wanted you to do some chores, you might not answer her. But if you thought she needed you, you'd come running in a hurry. That's the way I feel about this."
Give me a B. Give me an E. Give me an A. Give me an R. Now what if that fails?
We were busy one Friday night, and I looked at my watch. I said, "It's 6:30. I said, "We got a good crowd in here. We're busy." And so I looked up, and Coach Bryant walked in. Had a suit on and vest and everything. And Coach Bryant entered that door. He had so much charisma that the crowd, there was a silence of the crowd. He said, "Damn, you busy." I said, "No, sir, Coach, no, sir. Come on back here." And we went in the back, and there was a guy just getting up. I told that busser, "If you ever clean a booth in a record-breaking time," I said, "you do it now." I can't tell you what customers told me a month ago, but I can tell you most everything that Coach Bryant told me. And it draws people here. It draws people to sit in a Bear Bryant booth. The waitress that's got that booth, she's happy because she knows it'll be busy and she can make some money.
The term hard scrabble would have to go for Paul Bryant's childhood. Morro Bottom is so small it's not even on a map. It might be now, but if it is on a map, it's because Bear Bryant put it there.
Paul William Bryant was born on September 11, 1913, in a small stretch of Arkansas countryside known as Morro Bottom. He was the 11th of 12 children and spent his childhood working a plow on the small family farm.
Everybody had to work to provide for one another. He had a strong mother, and that's where he got a lot of his ideas about what he wanted to be.
His mom drove that family and held it together, made sure that they had clothes, got to school, and sold the family produce in town.
Every Saturday, Bryant would travel to town with his mother to sell vegetables from a mule-drawn cart. Bryant hated it.
And so as they would do that, people would come out and kids would point and laugh and giggle and make fun of Uncle Paul and Grandma Ida because they were peddling produce in a wagon. They were poor.
That was a humiliation which stayed with him his whole life. When he was in his 60s, he said he could still remember the names of all the kids that laughed at him. He said, all I had was football, and I held on to it like it was life.
At the 32-yard line, there's going to be fourth down.
On New Year's Day, 1927, a 13-year-old Paul Bryant huddled around a radio in the lobby of the Kilgore Hotel. The annual Rose Bowl game was being broadcast nationwide. The game featured Stanford and Alabama. For Bryant, it would be a turning point.
The Rose Bowl game that Paul Bryant listened to, the hysteria, the excitement, that must have been a huge, huge thing on New Year's Day. Alabama's in the Rose Bowl. Who knows if it had been Georgia, LSU, Auburn, what might have happened and how history would have changed had some other team been in the Rose Bowl that particular day. But it was Alabama. That's what Paul heard. That's what excited him, and that's where he wanted to go to play football.
Bryant took quickly to football. By his senior year in high school, he would lead his team to an Arkansas State championship. When Alabama coaches came to recruit players from the team, they picked Bryant.
Bryant always put himself down as a player. The truth is that he was a very good football player. He was big, he could block, he could catch, he had good hands, and he was a terrific defensive player as well, and back then you had to be both.
By January 1935, Bryant's journey had come full circle as he took the field against Stanford in the Rose Bowl, this time as a player. They would win the game 29-13 and be awarded the national championship. It was the highlight of Bryant's playing career. The University of Alabama was a new chapter in Bryant's life.
He had to pull himself up from his bootstraps, and he had to make it work because he didn't have anything else to go back to.
He found success on the football field and found a wife off of it. He met Mary Harmon Black during the fall of his junior year. He once described her as the campus beauty queen. When he finally got up the nerve to ask her out, she told him no. He persisted, and they were married for 47 years.
He, I think, decided very quickly that coaching would be right for him, and he had learned so much and was studying the game while he was playing it. And from there, it was just a matter of when and where.
Does a kid grow up wanting to be a coach? I always had the naive feeling that a guy who was a coach probably wanted to play but wasn't sure he could or wasn't big enough.
When I grew up, of course, I wanted to do anything. I wouldn't take anything in the world now for living on a small farm back then in Arkansas and freezing to death. And I hated that then. And but I don't have to do it. That's probably why I'm coaching, because I couldn't have done anything else anyway.
Bryant's first head coaching job came just 7 years after leaving Alabama. The University of Maryland decided to give him a shot.
I remember he coached at the University of Maryland, and that's the first time his name had come up because he did a great job there, only stayed there 1 year. Then he went to Kentucky and won the Southeastern Conference Championship, which they never do, then Texas A&M, and I was a young coach coming along, and so I just admired everything he did.
First time I saw Coach Bryant, I really didn't know who he was. So I was a freshman at Texas A&M. We were having what they call a yell practice. I didn't know who Coach Bryant was. None of us did. And he makes a speech to the student body. And I remember he was standing there, big man, and he takes his tie off and takes his coat off. I looked at my roommate and I said, I don't know who this guy is, but there's something special about him.
Every school he coached at did a dramatic turnaround, and usually very quickly. usually in 1 year.
Now, they went through heck. I mean, he was tough on them. You know what? But he made men out of them.
I never gave quitting a thought. I did want to die. When we'd go into the town of Junction every once in a while to practice, we had to go sort of around the curve and over a bridge. And I kept thinking, man, if this bus breaks, we'll just fail and we just sort of go out into that water and drown, it'd be an honorable way out.
By 1957, Bryant had become one of the most well-respected coaches in the country. But over at his alma mater, things couldn't get much worse.
Texas Christian University rides herd on a fumbling Alabama team in Tuscaloosa. Jim Swink, sink, the Crimson Tide of Alabama, suffering its 6th defeat in a row. TCU wins 21-0.
It's difficult now for Alabama fans to understand how bad that team was. Bart Starr, who was a great quarterback, of course, in the NFL, won more championships than anybody else, wasn't even starting his senior year. Think about if you were at the University of Alabama at that particular time in the late 50s. Think about how bad the team was, and you've got to get somebody back here. Then look around. Who's the logical man? Not only was Bryant the most logical person to try for, he was the only one that they had in mind.
Coach Claiborne called a squad meeting and said that Coach Bryant would come in and he wanted to speak to the squad. And Coach Bryant, he came in, he drew everybody's attention. I'd never seen anything like it. Not a whisper, the talking quit. And I guess I was stupid enough to think, and a lot of the others were too, that he'd come in, and tell us a light joke and break the ice. And well, he came in and he'd winding that watch and looking at his clock. And 1 o'clock, he closed that door. I advise you, and you can take me at my word, to be in shape when spring practice starts. You've never been through something you're going to go through if you stay here. And if you stay here, you're going to play. If you don't, I don't want you. And he says, I'm going to build a football team. I don't know how long it'll take me, but I'm going to build one, and you can be with me or you can leave. When he left, we were stunned. Nobody knew what really to expect. After everybody left, I know some of us were in there talking and said, I wonder if any of these trustees and presidents know that they have hired a madman.
One morning, my father was gone to coffee. So in walks this great big guy. There's a gravel voice. I asked for my father, Frank. I said, well, he's out, but I'm his son. I'm Butch. What could I do for you? He said, well, I'd like to get 2 suits. So I took his measurements, and he's wide shoulders, small waist. Waist was about 37. I measured him for the suits and told him I'd call him in 4 or 5 weeks. So my dad comes back from coffee like an hour later. So I started telling him about this man. He came in. Then he noticed the name, says, you know who this is? I said, yeah, it's Paul W. Bryant. I said, I even got his phone number. He lives in Tuscaloosa. He said, boy, that's that new coach at Alabama. They call him Bear.
It didn't take but 2 to 3 weeks before you really realized things were different.
Pure hell. Agility drills, climbed ropes, we had to wrestle. You never stopped.
He would go up to his top of his tower, and he'd have a megaphone in his hand. You could hear him in Northport, you know what I'm saying? You could hear him. He'd walk up on top of that tower and bark orders with that megaphone.
He shouted over his bullhorn at me. I remember him saying, Duncan, all the way, all the time. All the way, all the time. That was one of the only things he ever said to me.
he would take a guy that came out of the game that had made an error. He always put his arms around his shoulders. And the mothers of some of the players, they were talking about, they thought that was the greatest thing in the world, that Coach Bryant would console their son after he had made this big error. And so we had to enlighten some of the mothers that it's not exactly what he was talking about.
The result of Bryant's new regiment was when the Alabama football team took the field, they felt they had a chance to win against anybody in any situation, and no matter how bad it was during a game, they were never out of it.
And if we do that as a team, 11 at the time, well, 4 years from now, why, we'll be walking out of here as a national champion. And I'll tell you this, I expect nothing less.
The Auburn-Alabama game, my senior year, I remember Coach Bryant made the statement in our little squad meeting. He said, I'm going to be proud of y'all, whatever happens. But he said, if they play as well as they can play, we play as well as we can play, they'll beat us 40-0. He said, but I don't think that's going to happen. He said, I think we're going to play above our heads. They're not going to play as good as they could play. And we got a shot. On that Thursday afternoon is when we realized we might have a shot at Auburn. He said if the linebacker and the end ever come off of you, you just turn and face the quarterback. About the first play of the fourth quarter, moves 40 yards out, and that's exactly the play we scored on. The exact way it was drawn on the bulletin board. We beat them 10-0.
Alabama rose rapidly in the 60s, and of course they win the national championship in 1961. And that was the culmination of all of this work. Everything fell into place.
The team this year went through 10 hard games undefeated. We honor tonight the University of Alabama.
He put people back to work. They either started coaching or they retired because the game changed. He could take an average kid and make him think he was pretty doggone good, and the kid would go play good, Everybody loves to build something, and that's exactly what he did.
Our state didn't have much to be proud of in those early years. And a winning football team was something that crossed all lines.
Samples go down at that right tackle point. Okay, can we get together? All we need is just somebody that wants to do some leadership out there. Now we go. Come on, Ed.
He's at the 40-yard line. He's at the 30.
He had a burning desire in his gut to win national championships and be better than anybody else, and that was contagious.
He wanted 11 players with one heartbeat, trying to win the game on every play.
It reminds me of a time that when we would go on the road, we'd stay at the old Bankhead of Tuttle in Birmingham. We'd stay at the old Admiral Sims in Mobile. We would do pregame meal, and after pregame meal, Coach Bryant would say, okay, all the players go with your position coaches, quarterbacks come with me. And we'd walk out of the front door of the old Admiral Sims and take a left and go around the block. And in this walk around the block of the hotel, he would bring up situations, and he would ask us a question about situations. Okay, Stabler, we score and we're going to go for 2. What would you do? What play would you call? And he would be puffing on that Chesterfield, and and he would go to the next guy. But he would always finish it that you are my personal representative on the field, which it's a load on your shoulders to know that you have that kind of responsibility when Coach Bryant says that to you, but it's where you want to be as a player.
By 1968, Bryant's teams had won 3 national championships, 4 SEC titles, 2 undefeated seasons, and earned Bryant a National Coach of the Year award.
He came to Alabama in 1958 making $17,500. There was a letter in there after we won the national championship in 1961, and it was from Dr. Rose, and it said, "Dear Paul, you have brought honor and fame back to the university by getting Alabama football back in its rightful place in the world, and I appreciate your declining to take a raise, but we're going to give you a $5,000 raise anyway."
One of the first things we tell our players is to keep in touch with their families. And when our freshmen first arrived,
it was in the early 80s. I want to say it was around 82. And the marketing people had come up with this idea of you want to reach out and touch someone, because back in those days you had to pay for long distance. So they got Bear Bryant to do this commercial, one of many, but this is the famous one.
Have you called your mama today? I sure wish I could call mine.
Reach out and touch someone.
At the end of the commercial, we had a telephone number for them to call because we wanted them to buy these prepaid cards. And so we had a little call center set up, and I must have had, 20 agents, 25 agents. And we knew exactly when the commercials were going to run, especially this one, the first one. And so we were expecting a couple of calls in. And so the commercial's over, and within seconds, the place lights up. I mean, literally, phones are ringing off the hook. We got people in queue waiting to get in. We got people getting busies. It's like, holy mackerel. I mean, like, where'd this coming from? And so I said, well, I'd like to listen into some of these calls. So I listened to some calls, and this was the typical call, not the atypical call. The typical call would be somebody would say, this is South Central Bell, how may I help you? And the person who called would say, well, I don't know, Bear told me to call you.
#1 football team in the world, Coach Paul Bear Bryant.
I think no other coach affected so many people as one of them, one of us, as Bear Bryant. Not only could they relate to where he came from, but his aspirations and the fact that he won. He was a winner. And he made you feel like you were a winner too.
From day one, as soon as he won, as soon as he changed the culture at Alabama, I think he was beloved. You would always read things in the paper that if he wanted to be governor, if he wanted to be a senator, if he wanted to be whatever, Coach Bryant could do that because he was so popular with people.
One of the best times for me was before the ball game, when the players were warming up, and he would prowl the whole field like with just grace. He was like a movie actor to me, and you could tell the fans, they were watching him more than they was watching the players warm up.
Coach Bryant, I don't think leaned against the goalpost because he thought it would make a good picture. But he knew very well it made a good picture when he was doing it.
Well, everybody around him, you could hear him whispering, that's Coach Bryant. Isn't that Coach Bryant? Is that the Bear? I'm sure he could hear it because I could hear it, but he never looked up.
We went to see the Yankees play in Washington. And we're coming in and sitting down, and Moose Skyron, who was the first baseman for the New York Yankees, they were the Yankees, they were the champs, you know. And he looks and says, "Hey, there's bears up there." And Mickey Mantle was in center field, and Hank Bauer was in right field. They were coming off the field, and they stopped and began this conversation. And I was really impressed with that, and still I am. I thought that was something.
I played in a golf tournament. I played in the St. Jude Open when I was with the Raiders and came back, and they paired me and Coach Bryant and Gerald Ford, the then president, was playing in a foursome right ahead of us. and Gerald Ford hit a hole-in-one on a par 3, and the crowd went nuts. And I'm sitting next to Coach Bryant, and Coach Bryant says, "He can't do that in front of me." And it's the President of the United States.
People that didn't know necessarily couldn't name a player on the Crimson Tide football team. They knew the picture of Bear Bryant and the houndstooth cap. And it got so famous that when his driver was speeding back and forth between, say, Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, Bryant would nap in the back seat. They just put the cap in the window, and the state troopers would lay off the car. They knew who it was.
All right, stand by, 30 seconds out.
Check calibration, monitor 2. Stand by VTR 3 on the open.
All set to go.
Ready.
Sound good.
Graphics ready.
Give them a standby.
10 seconds out. All cameras get set, please.
All right, countdown, please. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Bear Bryant Show. We're glad you could join our review of the exciting action of your University of Alabama's Crimson Tide football. The Bear Bryant Show is
The show was everything. There was not ESPN where you see 24 replays before the next morning. It was the only time people got to see Coach Bryant and hear him talk about his team.
I made a statement yesterday that I think every person on the team tried to win on every play. After looking at the film, that isn't true.
People made appointments to be home to watch that show.
You broke down, Tennessee broke down. Bingo! There's a goodie in there.
A friend of mine's father was a doctor, and he wouldn't deliver babies in the fall from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m.
He was a natural. He could seem so homey and shy and like this wasn't suited for him. He was doing it just for you because he knew you wanted to see the game.
The Golden Flake family of snacks, and we'll put some potato chips out. And of course, by the Alabama Bank Corporation. Coach, you fumble the money.
Yeah, I'm fumbling most things nowadays.
Yeah, Duncan, don't you fumble. Oh, he'll die if he fumbles that ball.
He was playing to his coaches. He was sending them messages. Coach Mal Moore used to tell me, we would watch that show because we knew what kind of practice we would have based on what he would say and the things that he would call out and point out.
I think we fumbled that ball, but came up with it. We carry the ball like a watermelon. That's not the way to carry it, Coach Moore.
Coach Bryant always wanted John Wayne to play him in a movie. It's a great story that I was told by Billy Neighbors. He said in 1959, some of the players snuck out late show of Rio Bravo.
All right, Buster, what do you do?
About halfway through the movie, they noticed that Coach Bryant is the only other person in the theater with them. And they figure when the movie's over, they're going to try and slip out before he sees that they're there. No chance of that. But they're all in the lobby at the same time, and it's Bryant who's a little bit embarrassed. And he just looks at them and says, I just wanted to get a good look at this guy that everybody says so much like me.
Our offices faced the door of Foster. Board of Trustees came in Coach Bryant's office to look through the windows to watch the proceedings. So yeah, it was a tense time. It really was.
It became obvious, I think, by the end of the 60s, it was just a matter of time until the Alabama football team integrated. And when it happened, it was going to happen completely.
He called a team meeting. And we're all sitting there, and Coach Bryant walks in, and he informed us. He said, guys, we have 3 black players that are going to come out for practice, and I want these young men treated the same way that you treat each other. Simple as that.
One of the first African Americans to start for Alabama was Sylvester Croom.
I was always going to Alabama A&M in Huntsville where my dad had played, and the possibility of ever playing in Alabama and playing for Coach Bryant never entered my mind until my senior year in high school. When Coach Donahue came to my house, he and my dad had a conversation, and I remember Dad asking him just one question. He said, "I don't want you to give him anything, but I don't want you to take anything away from him either." Coach Donahue assured Daddy that I'd be given a fair chance. It was intimidating and it was somewhat terrifying, but a large part of me wanted to know if I could measure up to this man's standards. And really that's why I went to Alabama. And I knew if I could make it there that we would win.
There was no black players or white players. You were an Alabama football player. That's the way he wanted it. That's the way it was. That's the way we were all treated. We were all treated as equals. You know, we was all able to go out there and compete as one. And he was building a team. He was not building a white team or a black team. He was building an Alabama football team.
I used to do the scrimmages by myself. I was the only official out there. One day we were having a scrimmage. Coach Bryant at one time put the ball on the 10-yard line and said, "You better get it in the end zone. You got 4 plays and you better get it in the zone." And he was a person that when he said something like that, it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Well, anyway, it's 4th down and about, say, 2. And Joe rolled out, and then all of a sudden he goes for the end zone. And he dives, and his knee very clearly hits on the 1-yard line. But the ball was in the end zone, so I give a touchdown. Well, the coaches went crazy. Coach Bryant comes out and said, his knee, I plain saw his knee hit. I said, "Coach, his knee did hit there, but the ball is not down where his knee hit. The ball's down where the ball is when his knee hit." And he told me, he said, "I'm going to find out about this." And he said, "You better be right about it." And I went home and read every rule book I could think, what the hell if I missed that? And the next Monday at practice, he came and told me, and he just, you were right. And that's about it. He didn't expand on it too much.
After 2 6-5 seasons, Bryant decided to make a change. He began implementing the wishbone offense, a new option-oriented formation that was only in use at a few schools around the country.
The newspapers were writing that he was over the hill and all that sort of thing. He obviously wasn't reading that because in '71 he went to the wishbone and won more games than anybody had in a decade in the history of the game.
Bryant came up with his version of the wishbone after asking his friend Darrell Royal to come in from Texas and teach his players how to do it. Over the years, the Alabama wishbone was modified. By the late 70s, it was something you didn't even recognize from '71.
You always have to reinvent your team, and any coach who wants to live in the past is never going to be successful in the future. He was willing to change and had the foresight to see the difference in how they played systematically prior to, all the success that they had, and being willing to make a change like that that would help them be more successful in the future. I think that's probably one of the things that made him great.
I don't want one that don't believe in my plan, but I know how to win. I believe in my plan so strongly that I'm not going to compromise that.
He surprised me in his adaptability as the years went by. Here you are, you're surrounded with 18 to 22-year-olds all the time, and you're aging, but they're not. So that adaptability has to be there, or they don't accept you.
Do you think you're a great football coach?
I used to be one of the best, but now I don't. I'm not a good football coach. I don't even coach football. Coaching is teaching. My staff does. I coach people. I'm pretty good at that. I know what it takes to win.
You know, I went to Alabama, felt like I had done enough in spring ball to be a starter starting to fall, and obviously we had a difference of opinion. You know, I quit at the beginning of my sophomore year thinking I had all the answers. So I heard that he wanted to see me after I quit in his office. So I'm thinking he thinks, oh, I made a mistake, we got to get him back or whatever. So he asked my dad to come with me. So he was very courteous to my dad and greeted him very warmly and said, "Come on in, Mr. Baumhauer." And he looked at me and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I heard you want to talk to me." He goes, "Well, I don't talk to quitters, but since you're here, come on in and sit." And then that was the start of a meeting that changed my life. He taught the game of life, and he was great at it.
Late in his career, a friend sent Bryant a short daily devotional. Bryant liked it so much he kept it in his wallet. Before the season started, he would read it to his players.
This is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. I can waste it, or I can use it for good. What I do today is very important because I'm exchanging a day of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone, leaving something in its place I have traded for it. I want it to be gain, not loss, good, not evil, success, not failure, in order that I shall not forget the price I paid for it.
On November 28, 1981, Bryant faced off against Auburn for his 315th win. The victory made him the winningest head coach in college football history.
Fans count things down to 5, 3, 2, 1 second left. Coach Paul Bryant wins number 315.
Today in Alabama and all over the United States, being a winner becomes synonymous with Coach Bear Bryant. Coach Bryant, on behalf of all your friends, congratulations and the best to you in the years ahead.
I remember a class assignment was given by my 5th grade English teacher at the time, and we were able to choose the topic of our choice. And of course, 5th grade boy in the state of Alabama, in the shadows of the university, we had just gotten word that Coach Bryant was getting ready to retire, so I chose that as my topic. Well, unbeknownst to me, after I submitted the poem, my English teacher had decided to submit the poem to the university. On that particular morning, the principal typically comes on and makes morning announcements. We have a special recognition for one of our 5th grade students, Jason Dunn, and that I had received a letter. She didn't specify where the letter had come from. But she began to read the letter over the intercom.
Dear Jason, thank you very much for sharing the poem you had written. You are a smart young man for a 5th grader, and I hope that you will continue to work hard and come to Bama someday. Best wishes to you and your family and your classmates at Berry Elementary. Sincerely, Paul Bryant.
At that point, it turned into a kind of a rock star morning. friends wanted to touch the letter. Everyone wanted to see if it was real, wanted to see if it was his handwriting. There were people, I'm sure, that just wanted to touch a piece of paper that maybe Coach Bryant had touched. And I knew that my mother would be picking me up later that afternoon. Couldn't wait to show her. And I remember getting to the car, opening up the door, sitting inside, and seeing tears down my mother's face. And at that moment, she just looked at me, and I told her, I said, "Mom, look, I have a letter from the bear." And she looked at me and said, "Son, the bear died today."
I knew how sick he was. He would lie down for a nap during the day and just tell me to get him up. That was something he just did not do. He was just really tired.
To me and to all my family, it was very sad because we knew that he was sick. And I think it wasn't just sad to us, but it was sad for the whole state of Alabama to see such a legend, such a dominant figure have to give it up.
There comes a time in every profession when you need to hang it up. At that time, it's come for me as head football coach at the University of Alabama.
Coach, you seem tired. Are you tired of football?
I'll never get tired of football. I'm a tired old man, but I'll never get tired of football.
We had a disappointing year. We lost some games that really we shouldn't have lost, and the leaders were disappointed. Somewhere we got to put a stop to this, and this being Coach Bryant's last game, let's go out on top. I was a very quiet player, and I tried to lead by example. Right before our captains went out, I pretty much said, I said, "Coach, 4 years ago, I came here as an 18-year-old boy. Tonight, I'll be leaving as a 22-year-old man." And I said, "Coach, I didn't understand a lot of things when I first got here, but I do now. And I want to thank you for that."
Martin calls the fair catch at the 19-yard line. Illinois 81 yards away. They will take over 1st and 10 with 1:43 left to play.
Illinois was driving down the field, chance to get the go-ahead touchdown, and time was running out.
It's caught at the 42-yard line.
The tension on the sideline throughout that drive was truly unbelievable.
1st and 10 Illinois at the 42.
It was the most nervous I have ever been in football.
Throws a pass, and he's got.
I can remember thinking about the time they crossed the 50-yard line, is that we can't lose this football game because we'll have to live with it the rest of our lives.
1:20 left to play. Jenner throws it right in.
I think it was Robbie Jones came up with the interception on that last drive. It was one of the most exciting feelings I've ever had, but the joy of it didn't last very long because it was more relief than anything else.
Paul Bear Bryant's legendary coaching career.
After the end of the game, we won the game. The players took him out to the field on their shoulders. They brought him back. I handed him a houndstooth hat. And when he was walking off the field, he walked off that field with that houndstooth hat on. Everybody remembers what they were doing when they heard Coach Bryant passed away.
At 12:24 p.m. today, Coach Paul W. Bear Bryant had a sudden cardiopulmonary arrest. All measures were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead at 1:30 p.m.
He was the man we all loved. We lost him, but I think he died happy. And that's it.
funeral was during the Super Bowl week, and there were 5 of us, or 4 or 5 of us, Alabama guys on that team. And we were all, I mean, I can't tell you how shook up we were, all of us, every one of us.
The kindergarten children have lined each side of the street, and they had cut out red hearts. And we miss you, we love you, and they were shaking the hearts as we went by.
It was unbelievable. The people standing on the freeway. I've never been to a president's funeral, but it had to be close.
If you're out at Elmwood Cemetery, you see 3 lines on the road path. The white one goes to the Confederate cemetery. The yellow one is for the Catholic burial. And the red one goes to one headstone, and that's Paul and Mary Harmon.
He left his footprint on everybody that played for him. I mean, you know, you didn't have to be a starter, but whether or not you were an All-American or you just barely made the football team. Football was just for 2 or 3 years. He was preparing us for a lifetime, and he knew that.
Bryant's final gift to his players can still be seen today in the Bryant Scholarship, a fund established by Bryant that gives the children of any former player a scholarship to the University of Alabama. Close to 1,000 students have used it to help pay for school.
Well, my dad is George Yogi Camburis, better known as Yogi. He was an invited walk-on around 1979. He played center, so he's a big man. I think Coach Bryant will be a part of our family for the rest of our lives. I'm 20 years old now, and he's still mentioned almost every day. And it makes me see how much he made an impact on my dad, and then in turn, it's made a big impact on our whole entire family.
I think about him every day. You know, I was capable of throwing it all away, very capable. You know, by giving me the opportunity, by kicking me in the pants, by making me get back into school, he basically saved me from myself.
He was a teacher. I think he understood men. I think he wasn't afraid to go against change, make change, be different.
I've had more people tell me Coach Bryant stories and how Coach Bryant impacted their lives. Players that played for him, people that heard him speak. So that really tells you what a great man he was.
He impacted lives of people all across Alabama, and I think all across the nation. And when you can change people's lives for the better, as he, I think, did, then that's a legacy that will live forever.